themselves.
Okay. So if everyone would go ahead, both on Zoom and in person, go ahead and mute yourselves. But if anything pops up, please feel free to jump in. My name is Kaylee Sweeterman, and I am a consultant here at Southwest Plains. I serve on our PDC committee, and I have the lovely opportunity of doing this training by myself for the first time. I have my wonderful mentors here to help guide me through this training. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Do you want to start first?
Sure. Jane Colbert. I'm right here. Come to some of your districts, so I'm glad you're all here. Let me know if you have any questions today.
I'm Tracy Taylor, and I have visited many of your districts, but I help Patty, who is the genius behind all of the back end side. I'm here to answer your questions anytime. Feel free to reach out to Patty or myself during the year. If you've got a question, feel free to call us or email us. And welcome. Thanks for coming.
So here are our PDC consultants and support staff. A lot of us have already introduced ourselves, but there are some other consultants who will serve as your PDC consultants throughout the year. You can always get in contact with them. But like Tracy said, Patty is kind of our mastermind behind PDC, and she works on the back end through all the technical pieces. And so if you ever have any questions, or if you have staff members who just need a little bit of extra support, or maybe have gotten lost somewhere in the process, she's fantastic at walking them through and supporting them through the creation of accounts or fixing points that maybe didn't get put in correctly, all of those things. So here's our contact information. If you're ever uncertain of how to get a hold of us, you can always call the main office and they can send you on to the correct consultant. Or on our website, there's a staff page that has everyone's emails and phone numbers that you can also reference. So this is a required training per KSDE for PDC chairs to just cover what are the rules and regulations of PDC chairs and committees within your districts. We're going to be talking about those regulations today, as well as the responsibilities that you and your committee have for providing PDC for your staff, and also some planning that needs to take place. We're going to talk about our 5-year plan today, which is a really big topic for those of you who are part of the PDC 2.0 consortium. So if you only hear one thing today, I hope you hear everything. But that 5-year plan is a big one because you fall under our umbrella, and we need information from you to fill out that 5-year plan so you can be in compliance, which is everyone's dream, right? Yes. Okay, so PDC does fall under the state board vision and the compliance piece for KISA. We know that KISA 2.0 is moving towards the 4 fundamentals, but really high quality professional development and intentional planning of what that professional development looks like within your district is still part of that KISA 2.0 and compliance. The state wants to know that you're being intentional about planning your professional development around your KISA goals, and that you're measuring whether or not that's successful for your staff and ultimately for student success. So just keep that in mind. That is our driving force behind this entire process. It's about student outcomes and how do we support teachers in getting students to where we want them to be academically. If you are a PDC 2.0 member, I know we have some participating today that are just looking to get their PDC chair training, but those that fall under Southwest Plains's umbrella of 2.0, just a reminder of what you gain from that membership. You will get a personal consultation with a consultant twice a year. Depending on your district size, it might be 2 days or 1 day. And that's where a consultant comes in and meets with your staff to talk about where they're at with their licensure, where they're at with their PDC points, and any next steps that they need to take in order to renew or move to a new license, to add endorsements, to add master's degrees, all of those things. We also collaborate with you during that time to make sure that you are meeting the requirements of KSDE, things like having your district PD plan in place, having individual development plans that have been updated for staff, and just kind of double checking some of those housekeeping items that is super easy to forget about when you have a million other hats that you're wearing within your district. So it's just kind of a check and balance, and to answer any questions that you might have that might be unclear within that process. We also maintain your PDC transcripts, and we will print those off, create downloads to send to your district admin to upload to the authenticated app, right? And that's where KSDE looks and makes sure you have those points needed for recertification or renewal. So you don't have to take care of paper pencil keeping track of points. We also maintain the PDC website, which your staff will use to update their individual development plan and to request points for college credit, knowledge, application, all of those. So that's what we take care of for those districts. For teachers in those PDC 2.0 districts, their responsibility is to update their individual development plan yearly. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And to also submit their individual points for approval. So if they go to an in-service or a training, or they're doing letters on their own, something like that, Kansas Math Project, they are responsible for going in and submitting those point requests for you, the chair and committee, to then approve. It is their job to maintain their license with KSDE. We come in and we do the best we can to make sure that we catch everyone, and especially those who have licenses that are about to expire. But when it comes down to it, it's our teachers who are responsible for going in, applying, and starting that process. And to also contact Southwest Plains when they need a renewal of their license. Really, it's not the teacher that has to request that transcript. It is your district admin, now that the application process has changed since it's all online. When a teacher goes to apply to renew a license or upgrade a license, an email is then sent to the district administrator asking for the upload of the transcript. That district administrator gets in contact with us. We send it to them. So really, teachers now don't have to house their transcript. You don't have to track down paper copies of everything and send it off to Topeka like in years past. So it's pretty streamlined, but teachers are responsible for those adding of points and making sure that their license is up to date. Your district PDC is in charge of providing final approval for all PDC points. So you as the committee or chair are the determining group on whether or not points are approved and fit to the individual development plan of that teacher, and then to submit electronically approval of local point requests. We track all of those points, we provide those transcripts, and really any pickles that you might get into, we have a lot of really knowledgeable staff that might be able to help troubleshoot, and if not, we can help get you in contact with someone at KSDE who can hopefully provide additional information. There's a lot of interesting licenses out there. And I feel like every year when I do visits, I see a new license. I really don't know much about that. So let me ask someone who knows more. So that's the benefit of being a part of our PDC 2.0 program. So who needs a PDC plan? All of your teachers need a PDC plan. It's good practice to make sure that your substitutes have a PDC plan. Many schools are working with substitutes to try to work towards a transitional license. So just getting them in the practice of tracking points, being aware of their professional development, and then later on, if they do become a licensed teacher, they can use those points that they gained during their substitute years for application and impact points as well. So they can double and triple those, which is a great benefit. Your retired teachers and also your administrators. So the first question I want to pose to everyone to consider is, how does your professional development council process and handle teachers who live within your district that might not be employed by the district? They might be stay-at-home moms, they might be stay-at-home dads, they might be retired. How do you support those teachers? How do you keep plans for them? And it hasn't been determined who might serve as the supervisor for these individuals. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes of talk time at your tables to discuss. We have a really great plan in place for how we support these individuals, or we need a little bit of an idea kick to figure out how to better support these teachers. So take a couple of minutes to discuss that. Those of you who are on Zoom, if you have any procedures in place that you would like to share, please put them in the chat.
Kaylee, can you, since we're on a discussion thing, can you tell me if Michelle Thompson from Lakin is in the room?
Yes, she is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's hop back together and have a little discussion or share out either things you do, things you know other districts do, what you find to be successful, those sort of conversations. So let's start with anyone in the room. I know I heard some, I don't want to call out this table right here, but some discussion about, hey, we have retired teachers in our district. Here's how they get in contact with us. Here's how we support them. Are you guys willing to share, and make sure you unmute your mic so we can hear you?
I think for me, I've just cultivated the relationships with those people and I know who they are. So I have a retired teacher that's maintaining her license and then a stay-at-home mom that's maintaining her license. And they just contact me, but that's the benefit of being someone local and I have the relationships with these people. So if you're not, I don't know what the solution to that is, but that works for us.
And then I'm going to call on you again. Will you talk a little bit about, do you involve them in your back to school in-services, any district in-services you have to help them with the accumulation of those PDC points?
No, I've had them invited before. They've never chosen to do that. My retired teacher, she just does book studies mostly. And then my stay-at-home mom, she does a lot of webinars, a lot of online learning. So that's what I see come across for them.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts or ideas in the room?
Haley, online, we had several that just said that basically that those that are living in their district follow all kind of the same procedures that that their regular staff does. John Nehes from Greeley County also said that those individuals follow the same requirements, but they don't participate in the nomination or selection of PDC committee members or things like that. But that's really the only difference between those not employed and those employed.
Great, thank you. Matt, do you have some ideas to share with us?
No, sorry, I hit my
No.
button.
You're okay. So just general good practices. If you're living in a small community where you have a very great knowledge base of your community members that have teaching licenses, reach out to them and make sure they know that they can maintain their license and their PDC with your district. That is a requirement. You can't deny someone living within your district that opportunity. And I know I heard some other people say we wait for them to get in contact with us. And not to add more to your plate, but sometimes teachers don't know. I know I tell on myself all the time as a teacher, my PDC knowledge was minimal. So if I would have become a stay-at-home mom, I don't know if I would have known that. Not saying that you have to reach out to them every year, but just let them know, hey, if you're looking to maintain your license, we can help you with that. Call us if you're interested in that. I also know some of the bigger districts that don't have that knowledge of everyone in their community. They put something on their website, just saying, hey, if you are looking to have a PDC account or house your points with us, then call this person and they can help you out. So it doesn't have to be a lot of work, but just some sort of information of, if you want the support and you want this opportunity, here's how to go about it.
Kaylee, and I might also say, once you know that individual and if you are part of our PDC 2.0 program, once they have an account, whatever email address they've set up with us, we send them reminders of when our consultants are coming, that they can give us a call, but they get that same email that all of your staff does. It says, you have X amount of points. This is when your license expires. Here's what you need. So I have had some of your stay-at-home moms, especially who are finishing up getting some points, and they'll call and ask about how they'll call us and ask, how do I renew and things like that. So they can get the support that way as well. So
we want to make it as easy as possible. We don't want to add any additional work, but just knowing that that opportunity is out there is important. Also, I forgot to mention at the beginning, we have Ed Kalis from KSDE licensure joining us at 10:30. So if you have any burning, pressing questions, that you have not been able to find an answer to or you're unclear on, please, if you're here in person, let us know, raise your hand, write it down. If you're on Zoom, put it into the chat. And when he's on at 10:30, we will ask those questions of him. I know every year we seem to have questions about PLCs and whether or not those count for points. Coaching clinics always seem to pop up. A lot of the different licenses and how we support those teachers and how do we help them with renewal is another common question. So anything that you would like to hear directly from the horse's mouth, go ahead and ask those or have those questions ready. Okay, so part of the compliance with your professional development PDC is having both a district and individual development plan. These need to be updated every single year for both districts and individuals. These need to be updated every single year for both districts and individuals. That's not to say that you have to make new goals every single year. But let's say for a district, you are starting a new KISA cycle. Hopefully your district development plans reflect the new 4 fundamentals and new goals that you've set based on student data, accountability report, all of those things. If you are in the middle of a cycle or if you feel comfortable with your goals being aligned to the needs of your students, just make sure you're updating the date for that goal. So instead of it saying June 2024, it should say June 2025. And similar for individuals. If you have already gotten your master's degree and that was one of your goals, you should probably update that. That's not to say I think some teachers get pigeonholed into being very specific with their goals. When you're supporting your teachers in the creation of these goals, first of all, it should be done with the supervisor. Cast kind of a wide net of what your goals are as a professional. So whether it's analyzing student data and making instructional decisions based on that, that can fit into a multitude of professional development trainings. Because remember, those points that teachers are requesting should be aligned to their individual goals. So casting a wide net kind of catches a lot of different trainings in support. So your district PD plan must include who decides the focus for staff development at the individual, building, and district levels. This is going to be a question we ask our PDC 2.0 participants when we talk about your 5-year plan. Are you sitting down with district administrators and building administrators to determine goals? And how are those goals then reflected in the planning of year-long professional development for staff? How is the focus determined for staff development? So what are you looking at? What are your, your lead measures? My KISA people, it makes me break out in hives. But what are you looking at to determine those staff development goals? And they have to be results-based in activities and actions to accomplish staff development priorities. So how are you going to implement that training throughout the year to meet those goals you've set as a district? It has to measure the impact of staff development. So hopefully seeing things like FastBridge scores change or state assessment scores, whatever you're looking at as your result, that has to be measurable within your goal. System for reporting results in alignment with KISA. And then our point assignments in line with state regulations. So pretty all-encompassing of being very intentional about planning. So not just haphazardly throwing training at your staff, but thinking about what are your student needs, what goals do you have for meeting those student needs, and what process or training will you take along the way. So who is going to do this and what time frame should the plan be updated in? Let's take a couple of minutes, talk at your tables, think at home. Who is involved in the creation and implementation of district professional development plans? And when are those plans updated and finalized? Okay, let's regroup and talk about your district PD plan. Who's a part of that process of developing the district PD plan? And what time frame do you work under when planning? Is there anyone in the room that would like to unmute and share what their district does, where they maybe have some trouble spots, what seems to work well? What's not working so well? What's really challenging in a small district to do, that maybe bigger districts don't deal with?
I think size, something we talk about all the time is really good professional development committees. A really good PD is hard to come by when you have lone wolf teachers. I don't say that badly, but you have one English teacher or one social studies teacher. Something we try and do is our PDC committee decides that focus. Then our admins kind of use that. We try and cross-reference IDP goals with what we do, but it's really hard to hit everybody. Something we do is we put a lot of focus in maintaining funds in our professional development to allow our staff to go outside of district, because there's a lot of times it's going to be more beneficial for our staff to go somewhere else with a more pointed aspect of development than our process, where it's very narrow.
So that was John Nahey's at Greeley County, correct? Just talking about, they try to look at individual development plans. Like most of our districts here, you have one or maybe two high school ELA teachers. You have maybe two third grade teachers. So being able to find a large enough cohort of teachers that have similar goals and needs to plan professional development around can be really challenging. So just making sure that there's funds allocated for those teachers to find professional development that's relevant to their content and their teaching outside of that district PD, but then also looking at holistically as a district, what are the goals and how do we support that in district? So great example of how you look at that, how you as an administrator along with your teachers collaborate to make those decisions.
And you heard my emotional support animal here as well.
Yeah.
It's still summer, so she still gets to come to school.
Oh my gosh. She was just telling you, you're doing a great job. You've got great ideas. You're rocking it. Anyone else in the room have, or on Zoom, thoughts around district PD?
I really struggle with this. I've done this for a long time and things are changing. We talked about that, but I really don't see our administrators really caring what our committee has to say. Now, I don't know if that's everywhere, but that's kind of their deal, and they decide at the beginning of school what we need. And so I personally do not see that this committee makes any difference on our professional development or what comes in before school and, that kind of stuff. But, it may be different in other places, but like I said, I've done this a long time and I've never once been asked what I feel are the needs of our district are.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You did have some on Zoom that said they had similar situations. Someone said we had a huge change of roles at our district. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking for them, feeling like they have a voice in their first year in this position. Can anyone speak to being in a similar position and then maybe what they did to help bridge that gap between districts and PDC committee and then admin and planning?
This is Jeremy Sampson. I'm at Waukene. What we've done is we include our admin. We have one administrator who comes to all of our PDC meetings to kind of be have an administrator on with us. So we're all talking about our goals and things as we move forward. And yes, the KISA stuff has been kind of monopolizing a lot of that, and our elementary staff did the whole letters training as a group and used our PDC days for our in-service days for that the last couple of years. We've just tried to make it a priority to collaborate with the administrators and the PDC council to get those things taken care of, so we're all have a voice on it.
Awesome. Thank you for adding that in, Jeremy. Any opportunity you have to get administrators in those meetings, which I know is easier said than done, to just discuss, hey, what are the goals of our staff as a whole? What trainings are they going to? Is this aligning to our district goals? What are our district goals? Have they been updated since 2019? Sometimes I feel like, especially at the beginning of the year, administrators have so much going on that asking them to sit down and talk about PDC is a hard ask of them because there's just so much to coordinate and do. But maybe having that invitation throughout the year of like, hey, come sit down with us during our committee meetings and let's talk about these things might be a way to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, and
I
I
have-
probably should be clear too. So I am the superintendent here at Greeley County, and I won't disagree with you as a former teacher. But I think something that we do probably that works really well is both of our admin are on our PDC committee. So we have 4 teachers, 2 admin. So we don't have a choice whether we attend those meetings, which I think is probably the big difference. Or at least why I hope that we're more responsive most of the time to those aspects, but I won't disagree with that. I think it's very easy for staff kind of get lost. And, I think the good part, and I think Jeremy talked a little bit about it too, is sometimes I get a lot more in the weeds on policy and what's coming down the pipe from KSD and KISA than teachers. And then I get to explain it and be like, I understand this doesn't necessarily always align. But I'm looking at your future, like letters, training, like, hey, you're going to have something. So let's make this a part of PDC.
Awesome.
I don't know, am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you, Jim.
Okay, I'm also, I guess I would say I was at Hoxie for 5 years. I'm starting my 4th year at Jackson Heights, and I'm the superintendent. And the first thing I did was the PDC committee. I think you almost need to define the roles of what you expect. Sometimes that committee gets bogged down in the minutia of approving points. I approve the points. The principals and they get pre-approval before they do PD, and I upload all the bulk points like in services, things like that. So that way we don't get in the weeds where we're going through looking at everybody's book studies and everybody's. So I think that really clears it up. And then as far as the actual professional development, we do surveys. It's a part of every BLT. It's in our district. Like when we do district meetings, and I'll be first to say our curriculum is probably our biggest concern. And we've been blessed. Dr. Gillespie has moved to this corner of the world. So she's going to do our curriculum, a full curriculum alignment in the next couple of years. And that came directly from our teachers. There's only, 50 teachers, 3 admin. I know we're a large 2A now, but I think that might be the first thing you try to say is, hey, as a committee, what's our expectation here? Like if it's just the minutia of clearing these points out, do we even need to meet? Like, do we really need to have a meeting to go through and decide, especially if it's district approved? Like I approve all those in bulk just to not muddy the waters. And then we really encourage our teachers to do the application and the impact because that's how they move over on the pay scale. So as long as it's something that's I approved as knowledge, I want them to get application and impact. I want them to get in that system. So we just provide just enough points that if anyone goes to all of our in services, they're guaranteed to get enough for their license. Past that, that's what the tool is for as far as their license. But as far as the actual professional development, I guess we don't look at this tool as what we use to seek professional development. We seek it out by just asking. And the tool and the actual process of clearing their points is just something I do as a management. If I have any questions, I just go ask the teacher, like, hey, I saw this. Could you let me know more? And if most of the time I don't. So that's kind of how we handle it, or I've handled it over the years.
That's awesome. Thank you, both John and Jim, for sharing that. Just kind of what stuck out to me during both of those gentlemen sharing is John talking about having admin on that PDC committee, which is a requirement. So your PDC committee should have building district administrator on it that is attending all of those meetings, that is talking about point approvals. So if you are needing some support from admin and they're not currently a part of your committee, share with them that is a compliance piece in that 5-year plan, that you have that district or building administrator involved in that process. And I really like how Jim talked about sending out surveys. And I know there's some other districts that do similar things during building leadership, during PLC time, just asking teachers, what do they need more support in? What are they hoping to learn more about? And using that as a starting point for making those district plans and decisions about PD. I think there were some people in here that had some information, questions, ideas to share.
I had a question. I've been in Lakin for 10 years and I think I've had 7 superintendents in 10 years. So, how can I, like, I just, with inconsistent leadership, a lot of these things are really hard to even know how to respond to. I guess what would be some guidance for our situation?
I would say if you are in a district where district admin, your superintendent seems to be changing often, I'm speaking to your situation because I'm very familiar with your district. You've had really great, consistent building admin. And admin that have been teachers and understand the PDC process. So if you can use them as your starting point of, we need to clean some things up, we need to maybe do things a little bit differently. Here's what we're required to do. How can we collaborate in this process? Might be a good starting point to then loop your superintendent in to that as well. Other ideas?
I want to piggyback on that idea is probably in our district, it's not just we have inconsistent admin. So I've had 2 principals in 4 years at the high school level, but we replace in terms of staff every 5 years, we're replacing somewhere between 30 to 45% of our staff. If either going to different districts or moving on. So it's the other question I have is how do you create a coherent district plan when you're bringing new staff in to where they are is vastly different from where older staff members are or where that, I guess that'd be my next question, especially when you're admin staff also at that same time phasing in and out.
Yes. What a fantastic question, because I think that's a situation that many of our small districts are facing where just that lack of consistency, you get a new administration team in during, I think of KISA, a 5-year KISA cycle, and they're trying to pick up goals and action plans that they themselves did not create, right? So that kind of becomes a heavy burden of your PDC chair to carry that torch and to include administrators in that process. So I guess, and my mentors here help guide me if I'm wrong in this. If I know that I'm going to be a consistent component in that PDC district plan as a chair, I want to maintain that consistency and then loop in my new administrators and let them know, kind of like Jim was talking about, clarifying what is your role within this process, what is your role within this compliance piece, and what do I need from you? And being very clear about what your role is versus their role. But then I also think, going back to your question about goals, I think as a whole, you can cast a net based on your student data and your student needs. And the expectation is that those teachers that are coming into the district, even if they're not consistent, should be expected to step up to meet those goals for your students. And the PD that you provide might adjust a little bit based on experience or knowledge, but the ultimate outcome of what you're hoping to see in student performance should stay the same. So that goal can stay pretty consistent, but every year having that conversation about who is our staff, what is our knowledge base, do we need to adjust PD based on that to fit this goal? So maybe necessarily goals don't change, but the plans for how you help them reach that goal is going to be a discussion point at the beginning of every year with admin.
And just a reminder for all of us in the room, we have 48 people on Zoom with us, so please make sure you turn on your mic if you're asking a question or responding. One thing that came to my mind is, because I do watch the turnover and to know who I'm supposed to be contacting, and I know it's great. And I know that a lot of our turnover is bringing in people who are very new to those, their first year admin. And I think sometimes they don't know what they don't know until we help guide them. I don't know, but just that kind of that peace offering of, hey, listen, I'm the PDC chair, and we would, by law, we have to have an administrator on board for the meetings. Can we sit down and talk about some of the expectations? And hopefully as our consultants come out and work with you on your individual differences, that the things that have to go into our umbrella plan that are specific to your district. Hopefully that will help create some of those conversations for you. Because it might be a situation where you say, you know, hey, can the PDC chair and our consultant come in and ask these questions so we can answer them, and hopefully that will also be an exposure to what things are expected of admin and PDC or PD planning for the future. And so hopefully that will be a good catalyst for that.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, is that as, if those of you that are part of the Southwest Plains 2.0, gosh, let us know as consultants. We'd be glad when we come out to speak with your administrators and talk to them about their goal, about the PD goals. Also, when they fill out the questionnaire to join our 5-year plan, those questions are gonna pop up, and that'll be a perfect time to approach those questions. So let us know. Reach out to us.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the district PD plan? If you are a system administrator on the PDC Southwest Plains PDC website, you do have access to update those goals. So just know that if you have approval powers, then you also have the power to go in and update that plan as well. So even if your goals are the same, remember to go in and update the date on those goals. Okay, so just to kind of round it out, we do want results-based staff development. So any professional development we're doing, any goals that we're writing should loop back to, we should see results in the way that our teachers teach and the way that our students perform. So just keep that in mind when you're developing those goals or maybe evaluating whether or not they need to be changed. Okay, so the professional development plan should include results from cooperative planning. So this is the individual development plan. So within that individual development plan, each teacher should be setting goals for themselves as professionals, and those goals should be set in conjunction with a designated supervisor, whether it's building admin or whoever is designated to support that teacher. It should be signed by the individual submitting the plan and by the individual supervisor, if the supervisor agrees with the plan. And then it is reviewed and approved by the local PDC committee. So a good practice for making sure that teachers have updated their individual development plan is to ask for time during your back to school in-service to just review this process with your teachers, whether they have been in the PDC program before or they've updated their goals every year. It's just good practice to make sure that they are reviewing their goals, making sure that they are still relevant to their professional goals, and then updating dates depending on whether or not they want to keep the same goals or if they want to update them. So with those goals, they should also be considering what needs they have for meeting those goals. So beyond just saying that I want to get my master's degree or I want to know more about the science of reading, we also want teachers to consider what needs they have to reach those goals. Those needs should be included in that conversation with their supervisor. It might also be really great information for developing the district professional development plan. The activities that teachers should be creating should be related to the content endorsement standards, their professional education, and also service to the profession. Okay, we're going to move past the district PD plan and the individual development plan. Any questions before we go on to licensure discussion? Any questions you want us to ask Ed about PD plans? Okay, with that, let's talk about licensure. So when we're looking at licensure of teachers, there are 3 ways that teachers can gain their licensure status, either by being nationally board certified, through the accumulation of professional development points, and also through college credit. So the Kansas licensure application system is fairly new within the last few years. If you are looking to renew your license this year, it might be different than the last time. You will go on to ksde.org, you'll go to the licensure page, and from there you'll find your applications, what form you need to fill out for your renewal. And then it will take you to the Kansas licensure application system, and it's an all online system. If you are unsure of what license that you need to be applying for, they have a really great button on the licensure page of KSDE that kind of leads you through some questions that can help you know what form to fill out. And when you get into the Kansas licensure application system, if you're in the wrong form, you're going to know it because it's going to ask you questions that aren't really relevant to your recertification or your application. But if you have a teacher that is unsure of what license to apply for or what form to fill out, and your consultant isn't there for another few weeks, this is a great place to start. And if there's any lingering questions, if they're still uncertain because they have one of those kind of unique newer licenses, you can always email the licensure operator. They go in every single morning. Their entire staff goes in and answers emails from the previous day. So the turnaround on getting a response is very, very quick. And any questions that you're like, I just don't feel comfortable answering this, I don't know enough about it, always lean those questions to this email right here. I know I use it often when I'm visiting districts if I don't know or the other consultants don't know, and they're very good and reliable on getting back to me with the right information.
And they'll tell you from the state, you'll get the quickest response from that email address. If you call, it's not going to be as quick because that goes into a queue and they don't look at that as often, but they every morning divvy out the email questions. And so those get answered right away. So.
There's also a couple of kind of interactive surveys that can be taken for whether or not a teacher's eligible for license renewal or license upgrade. I think the advice most of us give out when it comes to questions about licenses is to first look at your license. KSDE is great about putting license renewal requirements on your actual license. So if you go and look it up on that first page, it'll say how many points you need, whether or not you need to do any additional college courses. And that's a great place to start and to direct teachers to start looking there so they can answer their own questions and not always come to you with easily answerable questions. So the most common types of licenses that you are going to see for your teachers are going to be your 1-year non-renewable licenses, your 2-year initial licenses. Now remember, with that 2-year initial license, no points are needed to upgrade to a professional license, only mentoring. So all that to say, teachers should still be accumulating PDC points. They still should be going to really great in-services and training because that stays on their transcript that they can then reference on their professional license on application and impact. But it's not necessary for them to be able to upgrade to that professional license. It's just the mentoring. Then we have our standard 5-year professional license. The professional license, the restricted, transition, visiting scholar, teal, sub, e-sub, all of those have a little bit different requirements of how you attain that license and what is needed to renew or reapply for that license. And that's where it's really helpful if you're not seeing that initial license, that professional license, have that teacher look up their license and see what the requirement is for renewal. I know with some of our professional license, so if you have a business teacher that's a former business owner, that's not necessarily on your traditional teaching license, it's required that the district administration approves the continuation of their employment, and that's what renews that license for them. But it's different for each license, so just keep that in mind. Anything to add to that?
Right, and we should probably update this slide because there's even more than when the slide was, and Kaylee's right. Almost every time we go out, we find a new license that we've never seen before. And truly the best way to find out exactly what is needed to renew is right on the license. And then from there, there's user questions, but yeah, there's all sorts of ways now to get a license of some kind.
And then too, if you look at those renewal requirements on those different licenses and you're still uncertain of the process, that's when I'd highly recommend emailing KSDE through that help email. Include that teacher's license number, educator number, or the download of their license, and then ask that question so they know who you're referencing. 'Cause sometimes we get interesting teachers that are from other states that are looking to transfer their professional license to Kansas, and lots of different scenarios. So no need to try to figure it out on your own. Ask KSDE. So the requirements for the renewal of a professional license, there needs to be an equal number of points and hours, or here's the equivalent. So if your teacher has a bachelor's degree and they are on a professional license, they will need 160 points to renew. Now, half of those have to come from college hours. So 80 college credit points are equivalent to 4 college credit hours. If your teacher decides that they want to renew on all college hours for their license, they are more than welcome to do that. But there is the minimum requirement of the 80 college credit points for that renewal. If a teacher has a master's degree, they have a requirement of 120 points for renewal. None of those have to come from college credit, but if they do come from college credit, that is also fine. And then if it is a retired teacher, it's half of the license points. So if it's a retired teacher that has a bachelor's degree, it'll be 80 points. And if it's a teacher that's retired with a master's degree, it'll be 60 points. But once again, you know, I feel like I keep saying the same thing, check your license. It's going to let you know. No, you are just fine. It is a Monday morning.
Hey, Kaylee, this is
Yes.
Patty.
Hi, Patty.
Hello. I just have one comment about the retired thing. I've
Okay.
had people call me for help, and if they're going to apply as a retired person, you have to check a box and then get some proof from Capers or something. And so, if they have enough points, they can just bypass that. I think that might be my question for Ed is it okay to say, no, I'm not retired and turn in all your points, not half the points? Or is it better to say, yes, I am retired, and then send in the proof? I think this person didn't have the proof or something. Do you understand my question?
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a great question.
It's really easy to get the proof. Just go onto the Capers site and you have to download the page that shows that you have retired and the amount of money that you're getting. So it is easy.
Yeah, I think it was technology challenged individual that didn't want to deal with
Me.
it.
If you have teachers that are in need of college credit and they need that college credit quickly, Kokopelli U is available. Our book studies can be done through the entire semester or can be completed within a week. Our graders are usually really good about if your teacher knows like, hey, I'm on, a time crunch, I really need this credit before September 15th. Let Patty know, because Patty is our administrator on organizing CocoU, and she will let the grader know that it is a time sensitive book study, and that grader will work to get that done, to get that college credit submitted for license renewal. I believe, and Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, the fall semester of CocoU begins beginning of September this year.
Yeah, it's September 9th. It's a little bit later. And that's only because I'm going to be out of the office.
Patty's going on vacay. But teachers can sign up, once again, correct me if I'm wrong, at any point within the semester for a book study. Could be at the beginning, could be midway through, to receive those college credits.
Yes, hopefully not the week before the session ends, but that has happened.
It's been known to happen. It's been known to happen. And hopefully, being a PDC 2.0 member, when you have consultants coming in, we try really hard to let teachers know within, like, if you're within the year of renewing, letting teachers know you still need 40 college credit points, or you still need 2 college credit hours. And then we do make note of that in our visit notes to just say, hey, like we talked about this with this teacher, so they should be aware of it. And if we don't have the opportunity to meet with them, we will send an email to administrators just so that they're aware of the need for college credit. But if they're looking for somewhere to get that college credit, CocoU is a great place to get those credits, work at your own pace. Some new good book studies that we've added as well. Okay, point approval. Your professional development council must approve all professional development points, including college credit. So once a teacher hits submit on those point requests, it will go to the council, the chair, for approval. Renewal activities must be completed during the term of the license. So if I just started a brand new license yesterday, I cannot apply for points that I earned last month because it was not earned within this current license period. So a great reminder to your teachers that as soon as they do a professional development activity, if they go to an in-service, to request those points as soon as possible so they're as relevant and timely as possible in their transcript. Renewal submitted 6 months. So 6 months prior to the expiration of a license, teachers can begin the renewal process for that license. Each district has a little bit different guidance on how timely they need point requests to be submitted. I know some districts, you are required to submit those point requests within the month. And if you do not, then they will not approve them. Other districts are pretty lenient. As long as you request them within your license period, they will be approved.
Right, and this will be one of the questions that we'll be asking for that individualized part of our umbrella plan is how do you, what are your time limits? What documentation do you require for college credit or for workshop attendance? Some districts require a copy of the agenda, some if there's a certificate of completion or something to be uploaded. Some districts want an official transcript, an unofficial is fine. As far as KSDE is concerned, they don't want the transcript at all. They look at our transcript, and if it's been approved, then that's good enough for them. So it needs to be whatever your PDC committee has designated as the proper proof of college credit. And so those will be some of the questions we're asking you when we come to clarify what your district does. So.
Mm-hmm. And so that might be a point of conversation to have with teachers too at the beginning of the year is what are those time limitations, if any, on the request of points and what kind of documentation is needed so they can plan ahead and have those either official, unofficial transcripts, the agendas if needed, just so that they're aware of what those requirements are for your individual district. So the renewal process, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but teachers will go to ksde.org. They'll find the correct form under licensure that they need to apply for. They'll fill out their information and then a request will be sent to the district administrator or whoever is in charge of the authenticated app, asking for a transcript or proof of mentorship if it's an initial license. KSDE will contact Southwest Plains for that transcript. We'll send it to them. They'll upload it to the authenticated app. And then an email will be sent to that teacher, that applicant, asking for the fee associated with that license renewal or application. And it'll be through ksde.org, that Kansas Licensure Application System. It's all housed within that system. Why do you say I call it class? I have to be very hard to not use acronyms because then I feel like some people are like, what are you talking about? Because there's so many acronyms in education. And yes. So no more chasing down your transcripts, no more chasing down certificates, all of that. It is all housed, if you are a part of Southwest Plains PDC, it's all housed within our transcripts. Like Tracy said, you don't have to submit an official transcript of college classes to KSDE anymore. They don't want to see that. They want it a little bit more condensed and clean.
Kaylee,
I have a question. Yes.
did somebody else have a question before mine? It's fine.
Go ahead, Kathy.
What if they're needing fingerprints? How do they do that? If their fingerprints need, like,
Okay,
they need a new set or something.
so the first part of that, they should know whether or not they need fingerprints when they go in and look up their license at the bottom. It'll say whether or not fingerprints are required, and that will have to be mailed in. So they'll do those fingerprints at whatever agency.
Or digital. They now have
Digital. Yes.
Either way.
But when they go in, they should be able to tell the sheriff's department where those fingerprints need to go. And then if they're digital, they're just sent to them that way. Great question. Patty, what do you have to?
Oh, well,
So-
as far as fingerprints, I still have some of those cards. If you're not in a place that does digital, I can mail out cards if you need me to. Just email or call me or whatever. My comment was going to be for the people who use our PDC 2.0, is to somehow let their teachers know when they're reapplying for their license that to put the district has their points, not Southwest Plains. It's a little bit confusing because people think Southwest Plains have their points because it's our system, but you really need to say that your district has your points.
And I believe in the KLAS system, it asks for a district code. Is that correct, Patty?
I do not know.
Yes. So that's where you just put in that district number for that.
Or if they came from another
Mhm.
district, they
Mhm.
can put down both districts.
Yes.
Yes. So if you had a teacher that moved in to your district, and some of their points are housed through another program or another district, they need to add both of those district numbers. And then KSDE will email out to both of those administrators asking for their transcripts. Okay, so just the art of license renewal. A Southwest Plains, if you're Southwest or PDC 2.0 member, we will come out, we will work to meet with teachers to remind them of when their license is renewing, how many points they need, and what forms they need to fill out. If points are needed, there are workshop opportunities to gain those PDC points as well as college credit available through almost all of our in-services. There's also COCO on Demand and COCO U, which can be found on our website that are available for college credit as well. Before we go on to points, I want to make a point that Patty reminded me of. If you are going in and you are putting in points for staff, or if staff is inputting points, make sure they're very concise about the dates in which that training occurred. If you put in a points request from August of 2024 to May of 2025, and your license expires in March, you're missing out on those points because the dates that you're requesting is outside of that license period. So just good practice for both anyone that's doing an activity load of their entire staff and individuals. Go in, if you have an in-service you attend every month, put in that point request every single month. Don't spread them out over the year because then you'll miss out on those points. There are 3 levels of points available for teachers to earn: knowledge, application, and impact. Our knowledge points are points that teachers earn based on what they learned. So that's their seat time. As a student, what are they gaining from a professional development, a training, so on and so forth. Application is when a teacher takes what they've learned during their knowledge seat time and applied it to their classroom practice. And then finally, impact is seeing how student results are impacted or changed by the application of the knowledge that a teacher received. So an example of this might be if your teachers are going through letters training, they will get 6 hours of knowledge points for every in-person training they attend. If they then go and use, let's say, the phonics lesson plan or any of the screener assessments in their classroom, they can then apply those for application. If they apply those for application, those are 2 times the points as the knowledge. So if they gain the knowledge about those assessments in a 6-hour training, When they apply it, they will earn 12 points from that. Now, if they're then able to look at outcomes at the end of an intervention cycle or through their progress monitoring, and they can see that it changed student outcomes, that's impact points. And that is 3 times the points. So that would be 3 times the points they earned in that initial knowledge phase. So that'd be 18 points. Math people check me, right? Oof, okay. So the knowledge level is just that 1-to-1 clock hour to point conversion. Some examples might be staff development that you attend. In the PDC account, teachers will put in things like what date was the training, how many hours did they sit for, and this is where it varies a little bit district to district based on your requirements. Some teachers just type in what the agenda was for the day or how it met their individual development plans. Other districts require a little bit more in-depth documentation of that. It can include oral or written professional reflection and pre and post assessment of the staff person's learning. So if there was an assessment piece involved in that in-service, they can upload that as well for that knowledge level point. Application is going to be that 2 times multiplier for knowledge. So it might be if a teacher receives instruction or knowledge in the Kansas Math Project, and then during a walkthrough, an administrator is able to document how they've adjusted their direct instruction during math time, that can be uploaded to serve as documentation for the application of that knowledge. Interviews with participants and their supervisors, so discussion teachers are having with their administrators on how they are going to implement or apply the knowledge that they've gained during in-service. A copy of a lesson plan. So if you attended Jen Stelter's workshop on the writing revolution, and then some of those strategies from that workshop are included in your lesson plan, that can be uploaded for application. Pre and post samples of student work and examination of participants' journals, portfolios, any artifacts that show what you've learned, you've applied to your classroom practice. And then impact. Does anyone see teachers using impact in their points requests very often? Occasionally?
Occasionally. Hey, I have a question on the application points.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, every time I have it, like if someone takes a college credit and they end up the knowledge points, they have the 20 points, but then they apply that. Do they again get the 40 points then? I have had people question that's, like, is that seems like it's a little high.
Can I answer that, Kaylee?
Thank you, Patty. Yes, you may.
Okay, so the thing with college credit is you can either get college credit, the 20 points for 1 credit, or knowledge points. So in order to get application, it has to be knowledge points is how our system works. And so I guess if they're getting 20 PD points instead of 20 college credit and it's 20 knowledge points, then that is 40. And that does seem like a lot. What do you think, Tracy?
I've got to think on this about how the program works.
How the program works is you can put in how the Southwest Plains PD 2.0 works is
It only reference back to knowledge points, not
Right.
college.
it references you back to knowledge points, but it also lets you enter the number of points. I think that's a really good ed question.
I think that's what I was going to say.
If you're gonna
because-
so for like Cocapella U, you can get 20 PD points if you have a master's degree, so you don't need college credit. You can get 20 PD points, just knowledge.
Correct.
And so
And-
that shows up as knowledge points that you can apply for application points.
Right.
I say we
think-
ask it.
I think that is correct because I wouldn't want to limit someone who was actually using the knowledge they got from a college course.
Mhm.
It does seem like a lot of points, but at the same time, usually a college course is a little more, in depth than a day-long workshop. A day-long workshop is only half credit. Right.
A
So
half
I,
a credit
but I
or
do-
like 6 knowledge.
Right. So I'm gonna write that down as one of our questions for Ed. But I think they can point back to that for application and get. That's just my gut reaction as a former teacher. That would have wanted her points. So, but yeah, I'm not sure what Ed's answer would be to that.
We have some thoughts here in the room.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So you're saying that college credits can be applied as knowledge points for college credit?
Yes, so it depends on kind of your district's guidelines. So like someone in the chat had shared that 1 college credit equals 20 knowledge points in their district. Correct. So you could either input those, sorry, I'm trying to wrap my brain around it too as I talk about it. You could either input those college credits as knowledge points, or you could input them as college credit points. But within our PDC system, if you input it as college credit, when you go to the application level, it asks you what knowledge you're referencing in your application. So if you put it in as college credit, it will not allow you to reference that college credit, only the knowledge. It does? Okay.
You also need to make sure, Kaylee, that you choose whether you want it to be for college credit
Okay.
or knowledge points. You can't
Okay.
do.
You can't do both. It's one or the other. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I
So,
thought it was just knowledge that you could cross-reference for application, but I did not know that.
so I have a EDS degree. So it would be in my interest to have any college credit that I get, say my administration work that I'm doing, put those in as knowledge points and not college credit. And then put application onto the back side of those. That's the way I'm understanding this?
So I was incorrect in that. So from what our friends have told us, you can cross-reference college credit points for that application. So if they're college credit points and they're college classes you've taken, put them in as college credit. And then if you apply it and you see impact from those classes, you can reference that in that PDC system.
And the other thing about that, Kaylee, is putting college credit in as knowledge is sort of a disadvantage because depending on the district, the salary scale thing depends on college credit.
College credit. Unless your district is willing to take PDC points and then convert them to college, but district by district, that's different.
I'm just like, if I'm doing the math in my head, and if you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if you're doing that and you go all the way to impact points, a single college class could net you 180 points. Is that correct?
Mhm.
20, 46, 120.
But if it's a,
Sorry,
what
120.
if it's a 3 credit hour class?
Well, though that's the other part. Yeah, every college class is a 3-hour class. So would that be 180?
And then 120. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 180 points. So as a professional development thing for your teachers, why isn't your scheme here just to tell everyone to take 2 college credits and they're done with all their points?
But don't you also have to be careful because your service to the profession you cannot take to your impact or your, yeah, so you have to be careful on your college classes that you're taking. If they're service to the profession, you cannot take them any farther. The way I understand it, correct?
Yes. I believe most college classes should be knowledge though, unless it's, oh, I can't even think of an example of do you have like some examples of some college classes that would be?
Well, I'm just thinking, on some of your admin things. Well, I know, I guess. Because even if you're doing budget and stuff, you're going to actually be using that. You know, when I'm just thinking of some of those classes, whether, which would be better for you to
However, I
go.
do feel like, is there, I haven't looked on it exactly, but I believe the application you have to show a direct impact on the student.
Yes,
So a positive.
positive impact on
Students.
students.
So I'm not sure that if you were using it for admin, like for budget.
I mean, I'm
yes,
I'm,
indirectly well, actually pretty directly money
So-
impacts, but I think it's a fine line.
I take a admin special education law class, and part of that special education law class is talking about how to create a more inclusive and diverse opportunities for special education students in my classroom. I take the knowledge from that and I apply it into the application process. And I say, hey, this is the things I did in my classroom after taking this class. So now I got my 2 times points. And then I go back and I show an increase in students with my special education students, and showed that they increased in a benchmark criteria that we set as a district. Would that count as an admin class impacting for special education or for students to get 180 points?
Totally an Ed question.
My gut reaction is yes,
Saying.
but I don't want to misguide and cause confusion, as I fear I already have.
Yeah, that would be my gut reaction as well, but I do want to ask Ed because I occasionally am, well, quite often am wrong. But that's my gut feeling because you've shown that impact. Now you can only do that once. I mean, you're not gonna every semester put in more impact to get that. You're also going to, I would say your PDC committee needs to make sure that they're collecting the documentation proving the impact in the application levels, which is always more work, which most teachers are not as interested because quite frankly, if I have a bachelor's and I take my 4 credits and I go to every in-service my district offers, I've got enough points to renew.
Points are not hard to get.
Right.
So for me, this whole discussion comes down to licensure versus salary.
Right.
And I don't think, as the PDC chair, I don't really care about the salary schedule. I care that the teachers are licensed.
Yes.
So if you're
Yes.
in a master's program, you're gonna get plenty of points to renew that license. So I don't like to play the points game with teachers.
And that, I guess, the 2 takeaways I have, and I know there's still some questions out there. If you earn college credit, I would just go ahead and put it in the system as college credit. Correct? And not translate it to knowledge points. I was misinformed in saying that because I didn't think that you could refer back to college credit for that application. I was wrong in that. The second one being, a lot of the application and impact is done to move on the salary schedule. And that's not consistent district to district. That's each district's negotiated agreement. So maybe that's a conversation you have with your teachers as well of why do this? What's the importance of it? What benefit is there? Whether or not that is of importance to you as a PDC chair and committee is up to you, but just knowing that that's available,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and I can tell you that is going to be one of the questions we're asking when we come, because that has to be included in the PDC plan that state wants. They want to know if your district uses points to move on the pay scale and how that works. So if, I'm not sure why, but yeah. And in the chat, Susan said, I seem to recall from past PDC training, you can only use the amount of time spent learning what you're applying for application, usually not the entire time. So yeah, I think for clarification, Ed is our,
Because that's where the college credit one gets a little tricky, because not all classes are 3 hours, but not all, however many hours I spent is spent on this one thing that I'm implementing into my classroom. So how do I differentiate that time for impact
Mhm.
and applicant, all of that. Yes, all great questions. And I think each district, I know, yes, go ahead, Kathy.
So something I was just telling my helper over here, Laura, so if you take a class that's a 3 college credit hour class, you put it in as college credit, you're gonna get 60 points because it's 20 points per credit
Mhm.
hour. But if you put it in as knowledge, you're only gonna get 3 points because you only get 1 point per hour. Right?
No.
If it's a 3 credit, no? Or
It
is
should
that-
also still be,
You would
Yeah,
just
like
have
if you
to,
take
it'd still
a,
be 60.
if you
it's your
take a
clock time,
Coca-Cola
okay.
U book study, but you don't need the college credit, it's 20 points.
Right, yeah, okay.
So even though there's no, I don't know if there's a way to actually measure how much seat time was spent earning those 3 hours, I think the conversion is always 1 credit hour to 20 PDC points. So
Right.
even if you didn't spend 60 hours working on that college course, you still receive, because that's just the flat conversion for it. Or you might have spent more than 60 hours, but you still only get 60 points for it. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's good
Yeah.
to know, because I've had teachers put in for book studies and they put the time they spent on it. Like, oh, I read this book, but it took me, 10 hours to read it
But some of them do that for points.
for knowledge.
They have their masters and they.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Mhm.
And some PD committees do approve those points.
Yeah, okay.
That's totally different, yeah.
That would probably not be a recommended way from KSDE to do that.
That's a good question. for Ed.
That'd
Let's
be
ask
also a
about
good
that.
question for Ed, because my understanding, if it's coming from a book study like that, that you're not counting the actual time reading the book. You're getting whatever that conversion is from the actual book study.
Okay,
So that's another question.
yeah.
Is that a place where a PDC committee can have a different policy?
Right.
Yeah.
And Jeremy added in the chat, very rarely do we see the application and impact point requests. I don't know if other districts see it often, but it's fairly underutilized or not even known about. So, but we'll ask Ed those questions. So impact level is looking at organizational change. So how do I see a difference in the performance of my students? How do I see a change in district or school policy, the revision of curriculum, all of those sorts of things through my application of my knowledge from whatever professional development I attended. So some examples of evidence you might upload for impact level would be evidence of improved student academic performance, whether it be a unit test or a screener, state assessment, even if you were intentional enough about connecting it back to that knowledge. Some samples of positive change in students' behavior, including study habits. So whether it's their attendance at after-school study sessions, improved school attendance, increased enrollment in advanced classes, a decrease in dropout rates or that attendance rate once again, increased participation in school activities, and improved homework completion rates. You could also use something like, if you're an MTSS school, can you look at your progress monitoring and see long-term, even before your screener, how, or that benchmark, how that student has improved. So service to the profession is separate from those 3 previous points that we talked about, the knowledge, the application, and impact. Service to the profession is always going to be a 1-to-1 conversion. So 1 point for every clock hour of service, and there's no application or impact points. So we can't multiply our service to the profession points. So some examples of service to the profession would include minutes noting contribution to meeting and time spent at meetings. I know this is always a huge question for Ed of, does my PLC time count as service to the profession? Does my SIT or SAT meeting count as service to the profession? If I go to a High Plains coaching meeting, all of those things. So will you ladies talk on that a little bit more?
I think he'll answer that question, but I believe as long as it's including student data, as long as you're talking about student data, then it can be counted.
Mhm.
But let's clear that with him again.
And I believe I've heard in the past Tim talk about if it's part of your regular duty as a teacher, part of your contract, then it cannot be counted as service to the profession. So if it is my duty to sit in PLCs and talk about student data, because that's my job, I can't count that as service to the profession. It's anything I do outside of my parameters of my job that serve teachers or the teaching profession that counts as service to the profession, but I could be misguided in that.
I believe that's correct.
A new one that we've just recently had, it has been, our teachers are going back to get to earn their, like their bus driving certification or to drive buses. Anyway, so, and I felt like it was not part of the service to profession. Am I incorrect on that?
I think that's where the service to the profession gets really tricky, because could you justify that you are serving students in your school by stepping up to be a bus driver and taking students to activities and getting them? Ed question. So if you have a opportunity to serve the profession through things like being district PDC, and am I also correct in saying that if there's a stipend attached to it, then it's not technically service to the profession? No, it was okay. It was okay. Okay, so things like being on the PDC committee when you have your meetings to approve points, that could count as service to the profession. If you're sitting on a curriculum development committee or a curriculum adoption committee, that could also count. If you're providing staff development to your staff, or an explanation of time spent and contribution made while holding an office or serving on a committee for an educational organization. So if you are one of KSDE's field teachers that goes out and supports other teachers in their literacy, math, science instructions, HGSS, those can all count as service to the profession points as well.
Things that you can't count, like if you have a weekly faculty meeting, that's not considered service to the profession. But an in-service where you're learning some kind of new skill or new analysis of data or something like that, absolutely, yes.
And see, I have a question. Okay, so when we talk about the faculty meetings, I feel like that's above and beyond our contract too, because that's usually outside of our time. So I've often felt like our staff meetings shouldn't be included in our service to profession because we're required to come.
I think that caveat that you're required to come is where he'll say that, no, it can't. Because it's considered part of your duty day, part of your job or part of your duties. That's just how I've heard him explain it in the past, but we will definitely get clarification from Ed when he jumps on.
So another question on that. Your sit team meetings, IEP meetings, are you allowed to use those as service to the profession?
I believe yes.
Yes.
And I say that
Okay.
because I've seen it on multiple
Okay,
transcripts.
we've allowed it too, but I wanted to make sure that, right, okay.
Well, just clarification too. So if you have a staff meeting that you're looking at student data, does that shift the narrative and then it is service to profession?
I would think so. I think that kind of shifts it to almost like to the in-service type of meeting where it's not just a faculty meeting of saying next week's homecoming and we're going to have the parade at 9 and things like that. You're actually, if you're analyzing the data or looking at it, I would think that would count.
Because I'll be honest, most of those things can be an email. And I think my teachers value that more than a staff meeting to say, this is what our plan is. We use staff meetings for data review. So
yes.
Yeah.
But like all the staff meetings, like at the beginning of the year, when we're doing all those with ours, we can count those as knowledge because we're getting the knowledge for the year. So you can count those as knowledge, but just not service to the profession.
Yes, that'd be correct.
Okay, so just to kind of visualize the type of points that can be earned and whether or not they can move to different levels. So for content, anything you're learning, that knowledge, you can get 1 point for every hour of seat time. If you apply that knowledge, it's 2 times the points. And if you can show the impact, 3 times the points. For professional education standards, you can also do the same. So anything where maybe it's not directly related to your content, but it's talking about teaching in general. So whether it be school finance or similar topics, 1 point for every contact hour, 2 times the points for knowledge, 3 times the points, 2 times the points for application, 3 times the points for impact, and service to the profession can only be 1 point for every seat hour. So just another way to kind of look at those points. If you have any questions about the guidelines that KSDE has laid out for PDC point approvals, you can find that in the Kansas PDC guidelines on page 75. They have that same matrix and also some decision paths for awarding PD points. It talks about looking at individual development plans, district development plans, and what kind of evidence might be necessary to approve those points. It gives a couple of scenarios of different teachers. And you might want to, as a committee, go through and look at whether or not you would approve points in the same way. Can kind of be a calibration activity if you're looking for some practice with that. But it's a pretty lengthy document. I don't know if it's been updated as of recently, but they say it's on the way. So just kind of a visual on that individual development plan. How should you work as a committee to approve those points? So kind of just a reiteration of what we've been talking about today, but if you need a physical copy of it, this would be where you would look. Like I said, it has some examples of how a teacher was able to get points at all 3 levels, what would be approved at different levels, what kind of evidence you would need to see. So as the PDC committee, you have certain responsibilities. The first one being where you're at today, which is the annual training. That's the first check mark. The second one is to develop operational procedures. And that's where that 5-year plan, we're going to be pretty specific about how your committee runs, how it operates, the procedures that are in place. How often are you meeting? Who's included in those meetings? How are you selecting PDC committee members? How are you approving points? All of those things. If you are part of Southwest Plains PDC 2.0, you fall under our umbrella plan, which is why we're just going to come and ask you questions, and then we'll generate your plan and submit it to KSDE for you. If you are not a member of PDC 2.0, either you have already completed your 5-year plan or you should be in the works of it. It's pretty comprehensive. It's a pretty long plan. That includes the ins and outs of your district's PDC. And then you also need to approve individual professional development plans. So after teachers, once again, have met with their supervisors to create those goals, you are the ultimate decider on approving those plans. So we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but any other examples of point requests you've seen in your districts that you've been a little uncertain on whether they should be approved, how they should be counted? Any questions on that?
To the SIT IEPs, the rest of our last year, SIT wouldn't count.
We were just talking about that. We definitely need to check with Ed on that, because the IEP, when I'm thinking we could not
I was
count.
trying to find my notes from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember him talking about IEP in specific, that no, it was
Since it's part of
part of the, right.
Because what you just said earlier was if it's part of the job, it can't count.
Correct.
So-
And IEPs are.
And so is SIT.
What I remember him saying, I thought it was like a teacher just taking a student to sit, no, but the SIT team, yes.
And that may be
And
the,
I think that's where,
I think you're
Mhm.
right.
but I definitely want to clarify that with Ed, because my memory's kind of foggy, other than I do remember that it was a no to IEP, but I felt like there was some kind of exception. Yeah,
I think you're
that
right.
you couldn't count the time you were working with the student in an MTSS or SIT situation, but you could count the committee time. But I can't say that with full confidence.
Can you remind them to turn their mics on?
During the day, they meet, during the planning time,
Mhm.
and that's part of their contracted
time.
for what.
I've definitely put that on our list of.
Yeah.
They're meeting as part of their like if they're meeting in their planning time, like they're giving up their planning time to have that meeting.
Right.
Like
Could you remind them to put their mics on?
Do you have your mic
Yes.
on? Thank you.
No, I'm just saying, like, if they're meeting during their planning time, then they're giving up their planning time for that meeting. Like,
That's considered their planning time, because it's always on Friday. So so the teachers get a planning time in the morning, so then on the regular time, they come to the meetings.
I wish I had that scenario. What, like, what I'm saying is like, if you're doing an IEP meeting, and usually whatever teachers do in that IEP meeting is, it's coming out of their planning time. Well, our planning times have been, we just had to renegotiate them, and they've been cut shorter this year than what they were in the past. Like, that's time for us to go. And like, I know we have to be part of those IEPs. Like, I know that's important for us to be part of them. Like, I don't disagree with that, but I also have 8 hours and 6 preps I need to do.
I just don't think they're going to count it as being knowledge points or service to the profession time. But I'm just guessing what they're gonna say. Just from past experience.
Lots of burning questions for Ed. I wonder if his ears are ringing right now. Like, oh. So once again, the KSDE licensure page is going to be a great place to reference if you're trying to support teachers or you're uncertain about license applications. So these 3 buttons up here are a great place to direct teachers to if they're uncertain about what license they need, whether or not they're eligible for renewal, for upgrade. And then once again, over here under the operator is the email that question should be directed to. But underneath, you'll see some more information about announcements from KSDE. Under license applications is where it will show you all the different forms. It'll talk about which form is like a synopsis of what each form is. It will also include what the requirements are for that license, so a great reference point as well. And then it will lead teachers to the licensure application system to fill out that application. I believe the fingerprints and then the change of name, address, verification of experience, and adding of a license or adding of a degree are really the only ones that teachers have to send in. So for the most part, it's all online except for those few exceptions.
That's going to be joining us soon. Do we want to
take a quick break? Yes. Let's take 10-minute break and then we'll hop back on with Ed. So we'll come back in at 10:27. It's going to hop into the PDC 2.0 website and talk through the navigation of our system a little bit. So there are a couple of ways to get to our PDC website. One is through Southwest Plains Regional Service Center.org. Under online tools, you can find that login for our PDC system. The link to get to the PDC system directly is swppdc.com, and it will take you to our PDC site here. If you are working, and I might be getting ahead of myself here, but if you are working to get new teachers logged into a PDC account, you'll have them go to the PDC website. And up here on the top right corner, there's a link for signing up. They'll click on that. And it's a pretty straightforward process to sign up for a PDC account. The only kind of tricky piece is this district code, and that's where teachers will put in whatever district number they're associated with. So 215-494, and that will connect them to your district's PDC account. Ed's on. Awesome. No, this is great. Okay. Tracy is going to kind of lead us through our questions with Ed, and Ed will share his knowledge with us. So welcome, Ed.
Ed,
Hi.
go ahead. If you have some introductory comments and things, feel free to go right ahead. And then whenever you're ready, we can jump into questions.
Okay. Yeah, our computer's been really slow here. So I'm glad I finally made it in. It took me forever to find the Zoom link again. Really, over the last 6 months or so, one of the things I've been noticing when I've been reviewing the plans is that when I'm talking to people about the PDC approving them, the IPDPs and the PDC points, that there's somewhat of a, not a disconnect necessarily, but not a really accurate description of how the authority that the PDC has is used. So I'm working through a new version, basically adding something about approvals to help people better describe what it is that they do. Because most of the folks that I would hear, and when we talk about this, say, well, yeah, the PDC approves it. And at the beginning, that meant they looked at everything in a meeting. And over time, that's not what that means. You know, if you use like your online tools to help with managing the data, or you use Frontline or PDP Toolbox, there's typically a series of approvers in a process for points and for the IPDPs. And a lot of times the PDC is not really doing anything other than maybe voting on whatever they approved at that, they got a list of names for either points or plans, and they approve that, which is legitimate as long as they understand what's going on and they've trained those folks well, that's fine. But then there more and more, I was seeing that the last person that was the approver, usually it was somebody in the curriculum and learning department, they were actually giving them the authority to do that, but that was not really portrayed in the plan. So hopefully that will be coming out soon as part of the guidance. And you just really kind of need to pick which of those 3 ways of approvals that you actually do. So that's really the biggest thing that's changed over the last 6 months or so. I am starting to get plans for the 2024 year. Actually, I've had 1 or 2 of them actually approved before they expired, which I think is the first time that KSDE has done that in a long time. I don't even know how long, but it was kind of cool. I wish I were able to do that for everybody, but next year I'm guessing we'll probably get at least 50% of the plans that are due for 2025 approved before they're actually expired, which will be really cool. What else is going on? I think that's the big thing. One thing that's come up is, on and off, I heard people talking about their negotiated agreements and how that affects what they can and cannot do with membership. And none of the plans that I've sent to the state board so far have included any of those comments. The PDC membership needs to be created and basically formed in the way that the regulations describe. So it's not people being assigned, it's not people being appointed. It's through the processes that you create as you do your work. So I do want to let people know that based on some research that we did, if that is in your contract, but it is contrary to the regulation, that we consider that null and void. And so we just proceed as we would normally, helping you figure out how to get the folks that you want on the PDC selected by the groups that they represent, and then having the officers voted on by the PDC officer, or actually, the PDC members themselves. So that's a little bit different. And so I'm thinking those are the big things that I've noticed. So if anybody has any other questions, I see them coming, and and I know they're going to hit me hard, and they're going to be asking a lot of questions about contracts, which I'm not really familiar with hugely, other than I know that if it's contrary to the regs and the way we've been doing the plans for the last 2 years, 3 years, that won't be sent to the state board. So that's really all I can say for sure. We're trying to get some more information that we can put out in a infograph to where that would help people a little bit more. But right now, really, we're trying to concentrate on making the PDC appropriate as far as its member constituents. So that's my pre-conversation. So anything that y'all want to ask and hopefully get answered, I'm here to do that.
Well, thank you, Ed. Yeah, we've been making a list this morning as questions have come up. One of the first questions is, where can a district find what colleges are not accepted to collect college credit from. Does that make
It
sense?
is, it does, it does. It is on our webpage. Unfortunately, there are lots of little details that may or may not be on that page. If you go to the, and in fact, if you want to share, I can go through that, or if you guys want to go to that page, that's fine, or I can just talk about it one way or the other. But when you go to the professional development page, there are 3 badges. Wait, 2 badges, I think. One for the PDP program or the PDC program, and one for the money. If people want money at the end of the year through the legislator, that's where, 3. So if you go into the far left one, the professional development program, and then you go down on the third one on the top, professional development councils, I started doing some things specifically for you all, and one of them is to verify college credit. And so you can go in there, and if you click on the picture, it will take you to the link of a database that will, at least at the minimum, tell you whether a college is regionally accredited. And so you start there. And then the rest, if you go back, the rest of the description of how you should accept stuff would be, if you go down a little bit more underneath the image or not. Oh, one of them is receiving the transcript from the institution's, the registrar's office, to make sure that that is from the registrars. There are a lot of places now, and it is almost impossible to manage. And at this point, what I would recommend is if you've got staff that really, really want to do something, that they do the legwork, that they assure that 1 semester hour is actually 1 semester hour, especially if it comes from a professional development or a continuing education institute on the campus, because they still consider that all part of the campus. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with the Idaho State thing, where we didn't, it was not even professional development during COVID, but they offer stuff that is, but the credit hours don't match. And at first, the registrar did not accept them. And then a new registrar came and they did some more reviews, and now they accept them at half credit. There's almost no way that we would be able to manage those kinds of things. So it would be up to, at the very latest, or most basic, would be the staff to verify that that's the case. And if they can't verify that, then they would have to forego it unless they were really going to do the effort to make that work. But that's what we have right now. If you have any other ideas about what to add to that, I think, I can't remember what I just put something out in the KSD Weekly, and it kind of was related to this, but it was more actually talking about the difference between points and credits for renewal as opposed to points and credits for salary scale movements. But there's a little bit of connection, just because you're going to want to know to make sure that all of those things are coming from an accurate place. But I think that answers the question. There is something there. If you guys have any, if you have any more ideas about what would be more helpful, that would be great. And then if I can manage it to where it covers most other situations, I would be more than happy to put that out there. Unfortunately, all of the little individual things that you guys wind up finding and seeing, there's really no way to manage those other than you can call yourself and say, let's say the continuing education section, department, whatever it is, and ask them, does this equate to a semester hour? Or actually be better to call the registrar's office and see how that goes. We're getting more. We've gotten UMass, what's it called? US Global Mass. There've been a number of other ones. At some point, we'll get a list to where you really just kind of need to pay attention to what they have in their brochures and other documentation.
Great. Another question concerns retired staff. When they are renewing, is it better to say, if they have enough points to renew with just points, is it better to say, no, I'm not retired and use all the points, or better to say I'm retired and turn in their CAPERS paperwork?
Oh, well, that would be a straight licensing question, and I can write that down and ask. I at this point, I think it just depends on what the person wants to do. I mean, you get half the points if you provide the paperwork. So it just depends on which actually it's going to be how much trouble you want to make, and which of those is, is going to be the one that's going to be either the least burdensome or the most convenient, however you want to determine that. Honestly, I don't know that it matters unless you, I don't know that it really matters, but if you could send me that again as an email or
Okay.
whatever, I will take a look into it from the licensing folks and get back to you.
Okay, I'll do that, Ed.
But I think mostly it's a matter of convenience. I think it potentially still comes out to the same outcome.
Okay. Another question, see if I can read my notes. When someone is using application and impact points, and they're pointing back to college credit as the knowledge point basis, and they ask for application points at 2 times the points, are they asking for that 20 points that came from the college credit hour? So essentially it'd be if you were going through the application to impact on 1 credit hour, you'd be going from 20 to 40 to 60 points of PD time.
Well, I've had this long conversation with Shane Carter, who's my boss. And at this point, unless you figure out based on what the what do they call those things? The syllabus at the beginning of the class, how that relates to the actual learning that they did, that's going to be part of that knowledge, to where you could tweak it down to a percentage of a syllabus or whatever. And you really, you can't make that distinction. If you can't make the distinction, you would need to do the full points for now. This is definitely something that we're looking at because there's going to be a lot of knowledge that you gain in a semester. But we've also got classes that are not at college. They're not a full semester. They get semester credit for it, but they only did 4 hours worth of work. They got credit from a college through an extended, basically, sit-down session. And at this point, it would be treated the same way. We don't have any other option. But whatever the regs say is how you can interpret it at this point.
Okay. Another question comes from people that are using perhaps a book study, and they've decided not to do the college credit where there's a quality of point per credit. Can they count the hours they spent reading a book instead? So I do a book study, it took me 10 hours to read it. I asked for 10 points.
I have a lot of districts that do not count reading time, they don't count reading time, but that's up to the PDC. But you're going to have fast readers, slow readers, so whatever the PDC wants to do, as long as they're not assigning points. So if they create a log and they decide reading is fine, because that's where you're learning it. You're talking about it more when you meet with other people, but you're still getting the knowledge in your head by reading it. But that happens at varying speeds and with varying levels of comprehension. So that would be something that the PDC could figure out how to do, as long as it's able to maintain and document the time.
Okay, very good. Then the next 3 or 4 questions really are all about service to the profession. And can you clarify, before I ask pointed questions, can you clarify what you see as qualifying as service to the profession points?
Honestly, I just go back to the definition. And that helps for a lot of stuff, maybe not so much within service, because there's a lot of stuff in there. But for service to the profession, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, if you could pull that up, that would be great. I'm trying to think of where it is. I know it's in the guidance document, but basically it's, I have had teachers say, well, I'm a math teacher, I'm the coach for the governor's competition, whatever, and I am training the students to do this. So that is the first thing you need to consider. Who's the audience? The audience should be teachers or leaders, whichever, whatever licensed audience you've got. And it should be to improve the profession of teaching or administration of education. So a lot of these things, in the case of the math, that is helping students And that doesn't fall under this. That would not even fall really under in-service unless they're providing some other kind of training. But it wouldn't be to students, it would be to some other group. That would be the first thing, is the audience. And then the second thing is it lists the kinds of things that you can consider under the profession, curriculum, instructional stuff. And then other things like working with organizations. Now, not every organization is out there to promote teaching. You might be a teacher on an organization that you enjoy, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily promoting the profession. So if you work for KSEA as a board member, or you do, you're on the art committee for KISA, or some of those other things that go back to the original kinds of areas that the definition mentions, it's clear that those things can count. But I have people they put teachers meetings, or they put some other stuff in there, and some of those might work. If you have PLCs that you do to where actually you're helping each other become better teachers, that would potentially be one of those things that would work. But some of the other stuff, I don't know, maybe something about if you're on the negotiating for negotiating the contract, if you can rationalize that to be something that is improving what's going on with the teachers and the administrators in your district, that might be able to work. A lot of it will come down to what the PDC thinks, but some of it is clearly not professional, based on the definition.
Can you put the definition
service to the
up
profession.
on the screen at all?
I can go look for it.
Hey,
Or if you
Ed,
go,
I'm on the guidance document right now and I'm trying to find it. Do you happen
it's
to
in
know what?
it's in section 4, at the beginning of section 4. It's probably the second or third page in, but I don't know. It's probably more like 35, 38.
And that's not showing on the shared screen.
Yeah, I was gonna, I didn't
Pull
want
it up
everyone to
first,
see
yeah.
how much trouble I was having finding it.
So
I'm
Ed,
not-
you kind of answered one of the questions about negotiation team meetings, that you need to be able to document how that's helping the profession. How about SIT meetings and IEP meetings?
IEP meetings wouldn't be no. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong guidance document.
Oh,
Let
I couldn't find it.
me, I'm gonna pull mine. Can you allow me to share?
Absolutely.
Let me find it real quick.
And you should be able to.
Yeah, that one was from 2008.
So the new one is available now.
It is. It's under the professional learning or professional development program button, whatever you want to call it, badge, whatever that is.
Is it under the professional development resources?
No. I'm trying to figure out how to get back in here to be able to share my documents. Let's see, share. I can show you here after we talk about it.
Okay.
You always have to move people's faces to get anywhere where you can navigate the document. Okay, section 4. See, doesn't this look a little more updated?
So the template, the PD plan template is basically that guidance document.
Well, there is the two together, and then there's a template to where it's just the parts.
Okay.
And now, of course, the little thing, how do I get rid of this? That I need to make this, oh no, I don't, it comes. I'll be right with, there it is. I'm trying to get to make it bigger, and everything that I do to move somebody out of the way, somebody else pops up. Make it, let's just get rid of it for now. Sorry. So if you look here, it means activities that help others in acquiring proficiency in instructional systems, pedagogy, or content, or that directly relate to licensure of professional educators, accreditation processes, or professional organizations. So it has limits, and it's mostly really centered around what teachers can do for each other to make their profession and their jobs better.
Okay, so if I'm thinking about though even like IEP and SIT meetings, and my feeling is my audience is still helping that student be successful in the classroom. And that's where I'm still struggling on why that isn't considered part of the service to profession. I mean, I guess that's where I feel like we're misconnecting a little bit.
I get it, and there's a small line between what this says to us and what people do day to day based on the type of job that they do. Now, if you're having conversations and if you're basically training each other on how to do IEPs, that's one thing. But I can do some more checking and see, because honestly, a lot of this stuff I get to do on my own. And I do ask you all's opinion as best I can as I'm going through the things, and I've added a lot of stuff to the guidance based on what people have told me over time. But a lot of the things, like I said, it's a fine line between the day-to-day and the service to the profession. So I will ask and see what I can find if there's anybody else here that has an opinion on it. I've heard your scenario before, but I've had that in other kinds of activities, and it's really sometimes hard to do. If you think most of the time where you're in there, you're learning from each other that you're becoming better at this, then that's how you would need to portray it to your PDC. And then maybe somewhere in your PDC documentation that they write out a rationale for some of the common meetings that you have, so they don't have to come back every time and revisit why they count this as service to the profession. Because I do get a lot of plans where they just list a lot of meetings, and some of them are, or they'll say presentations. Okay. So if you saw presentations on a PDC transcript and they want service to the profession, what are the questions that you would ask? Who are you presenting to? What are you presenting about? If it's a knowledge presentation, then you don't get service to the profession. If it's service to the profession, you don't get knowledge. And you certainly won't be able to move up through application and the other impact. So I'll double check on the IEP, because you're not the first and I'm sure you won't be the last, but that's at this point kind of the way we're looking at it. For special ed teachers, that is a part of the work. And a lot of stuff that we do, if it's part of the daily routine or becomes logistical, operational thing for the school, then it's less likely to be considered this, or sometimes even knowledge, depending on what it is.
But wouldn't it still count as service to the profession if you have a general classroom teacher sitting in an IEP meeting or a SIT meeting when they're using their planning period time, when that time is contracted out to plan for their general classroom class, but they're being pulled out so that they could attend that IEP meeting or that SIT meeting?
And in what capacity? As somebody who's part of the IEP and answering questions about the student, or somebody who's watching the IEP and learning about IEPs? I'm not IEPs, I'm sorry, IEPs.
The first one is, guess what I'd say is, like, because my district doesn't have a normal IEP team or something like that. So it's teachers are pulled into it that have that student generally that are there. But most of the time, the teacher that's pulled into that is a teacher that is giving up their plan period to go into that meeting.
Yeah, and that the giving up the planning period, that would not be something that would have a bearing on what we would decide. I think the biggest thing is going back to those definitions. And if you can tweak that to make those things about proficiency in instructional systems, pedagogy, content, or those other kinds of activities, then you might be able to do it. But again, it goes back to going back to the definition. Because otherwise, if you're a teacher of any child in a SPED class you have a potential of being called in an IEP.
One more question about, it's sort of related to that. If a district were to ask teachers to become CDL certified and they go through the bus training and et cetera, would you consider that service to the profession or knowledge? How would they handle that type of training?
Well, I'm not sure we would count it at all. That would be another duty and not particularly, I mean, it's an extra duty not assigned as part of the job as a licensed teacher. We have lots of people who serve on lots of different things, and a lot of them don't count for some of the stuff that we look at. And that would probably be one of them. I can't think of an area, they learned something, but it's not to either, improve their teaching ability or improve the outcomes of their students. That's really kind of what we're looking at.
Okay. All right. And then in our chat, Kevin asked if for the districts that are not part of our umbrella plan, will you be contacting districts that their plans are due to start that process, or do they need to contact you?
No, I'm contacting people. Now, if like for you guys, you have your set people that we're working with, and we're working on that process basically through this year, through the spring semester. If you are with somebody else, you should have already been contacted if you're a 2024. If you were due last week, you should have gotten something back on April 1st. Now because we're catching up, not really, but we're I've still got some laggers from 2 years ago, but yes, you should know, hopefully by January 1st, I'm going to start sending a reminder that this is your year to renew, and let you know that by April 1st, you can start turning in your plans if you're ready to do that. Because I can't. I mean, and at some point I keep hearing I'm going to get some help, but it's working okay. I would be fine with help, but I think, yes, people will know ahead of time, and some people have fallen through the cracks. So if you're keeping track of this yourself, that's great. You should be doing that, but it's been very few. And usually it's just because they kind of got notified and we didn't hear anything from them, and then they just kind of got dropped out of lists or whatever. So yes, the answer would be, we will notify you, and then whoever's doing my job, however long I get to do it, then it would come to me. And you can always send it to the professional learning site also. I mean, I will get it there. So either of those things works. And you will get instructions when you get notified about it being time. I prefer it in Word, your document, because a lot of times when I convert it from PDF, it doesn't, all of the tables and some of the pictures don't convert well, and it just makes it a little bit more difficult at the end when we're looking at the final version.
Okay.
So.
All right. Does anyone, we have about 47 people online, and about 17 in the house. I'm going to open it to questions for anyone that would like to unmute, or anyone here in the room that would like to use their mic to ask any questions before we let you go.
Okay. And because I couldn't find the address, I had to go get my computer off of my desk. So I think I have 52% battery remaining, 31 minutes estimated. So anyway, I'm good until the battery dies. So I'm good. So, I will tell you, I've got about 10 or 11 districts that did not get their stuff in for if they had 2024 due dates. So I will send out something on Friday to remind them again. A week or two, I've had people call and they were worried about whether the board approved them before they got to me or whatever. I don't need that. I just need the plan. By the time we're done, whatever you sent me will probably not look much like what we finish with. So a pre-approval by the PDC or the board is not necessary. And you'll get all of their buy-in as you go through the process of doing the review.
That sounds good.
Okay, Ed, I have a quick question on committees as far as those that would count for PD points. just thinking in our district, we have, admin meetings. Do those count? I mean, where we're looking at student data, we're looking at, planning for the district, that kind of thing. Also, district leadership teams. KSDE has this, all districts have those. Will those meetings count for PD points? And the last thing, your KISA work that you're planning, we're working on, does that count? Can we use those as PD points?
I will tell you that I'll start with the good news first. KISA counts. KISA counts would fall under service of the profession under the accreditation process. Some of that other stuff is basically anything operational or logistic, unless you're adding a knowledge component to it. You do a training as part of that meeting. They're really not PDC worthy points. If you go back and look at the definition, they really don't meet that definition. We're going to hopefully be reworking the regs to where we can refine these a little bit more to be more specific or more general, depending on what the feel is for this, to give people a little bit more leeway. I will tell you, when we get transcripts, and I am not involved with the licensing at all, I listen to them and their 111 calls, they get one person at a time. When I hear them talk about transcripts, I get 500 points. I hear 1,000 points in that 5-year period. There are a lot of points on those things. If we actually did an audit of those points, there really wouldn't be much, there that would help them earn those points based on what those are. I would concentrate with your folks on the things that are the things that are for teachers and the things that help them do their work better, that are clearly, letters, training, some of those other things that you're going to do anyway. The ones that are clearly knowledge giving that allow you to do application and impact. And you're not going to potentially get as many of them, but at least when we get transcripts, it'll be more clear that you're paring down to the things that actually make a difference. And hopefully with this new school improvement process and the 4 fundamentals, there'll be some more guidance on what that can be. So you'll be able to say, well, I'm going to be doing this anyway. So that'll be a little bit easier to show on your transcripts. When I hear 1,000 points, I got to wonder where they came from. I've had people tell me, they just say they did something. They went to a meeting and it was service to the profession. That's all it said, meeting, service to the profession, 3 hours. Well, we don't have the ability to go through every one of those transcripts. We look for the big ones that are clearly what we're looking for. And most of the time we find it. But some of that other stuff, if you don't put it on there, it will clear up a lot of things for a lot of folks.
Yet another chat question is, what about the vector trainings at the beginning of the year, bloodborne pathogen, bullying, etc.?
Honestly, we're a little, because it doesn't meet the basic definition of professional development, but it does somewhat meet the definition of staff development, which is part of the in-service education. Not a can of worms that I want to open, because we don't have a way of dealing with that, because it's based on the goals of the district, and we would not consider them professional development. We don't have any control. If you read the definition of in-service education and you find some of those things are deserving of points, they are not, yes, they will keep a student alive long enough for you to be able to teach them the next day, but they're not what's meant for personal development or professional development. So at this point, we don't say one way or the other. We don't commit to that because we haven't yet. We have to look at that definition to see if it's something that we want to keep. But at this point, it's there. So if you've got some of those trainings, the PDC will have to decide.
Okay.
So on our transcripts, sometimes we do go ahead and indicate like SIT meetings or staff meetings. Do we need to have some kind of documentation that verifies it was actually used in an appropriate way to enhance student learning? Or how are we documenting our transcripts, or what do we have to keep in the background so that if we do get vetted, that we have the documentation necessary?
I would think whatever you normally keep. If you've got a lot of people have their, what do they call it? Their catalog of courses that they've already approved through the PDC. If you do a special, let's say you do a leaders training and you have somebody come in and talk for an hour, you can just say training at leaders meeting and then put an hour. So I don't know that, sign-in sheets are fine. All those kinds of pieces of documentation work. Now, I'll tell you what, I've been pushing to do verifications instead of plan reviews all the time. I mean, you give me a plan, I look at it, and then I won't see that plan for 5 years, but are you doing anything that you said? And it's not because I don't trust you, it's because there's lots of misunderstanding. There are lots of culture changes that have to take place in some districts to even get the superintendent off the PDC unless the superintendent was voted onto the PDC by other leaders, and a variety of other things. So I had a brain dump. The question again, please.
I think my question is, we include SIT meetings as part of our PDC. And because I do feel like it impacts our student learning, or, and I feel like it's very justified in giving points. But the question is, if I put SIT on a transcript, is a teacher going to be flagged because that is something that you kind of feel is in a questionable area? Do I need to keep documentation in-house that shows that it was actually impacting students?
I would say no. In the end, if any of these kinds of things change and we have more detailed guidance, it will be over a long period of time that it's implemented. I've been talking about bloodborne pathogens and all of that other stuff for a couple of years, not being what we consider professional development. But we haven't made any official announcements. We can't really do that when the definition of staff development is in the regs. So, I would say no. And honestly, if it gets to the point where you're so limited, I mean, somebody's so close to getting what they need, then they might look at it just with questions. But let's say you do you're going to count just an hour-long knowledge session in a bigger meeting. Name the meeting and just put the hour and not all the other meeting. If it's not a meeting that would be appropriate for that. Honestly, at this point, I can't say outright, don't do that anymore ever again. It's just one of those things at this point, the PDCs are going to have to, can you count? I've said what I've said. I don't consider that professional development because really when it says improving the performance, it's partially through the training that teachers getting, not just in general. It's basically, what are you doing for teachers that make them know more now, learn different things that get them to improve the outcomes of the students. So there might be other confounding factors that have helped students improve, but are they really, not part of the normal organizational process that you do that would potentially be part of those SIT meetings? So it's not a yes or no question. It's basically taking what the PDC does with those definitions and putting it in there. And really, until I get to the point where I'm down to where I still need 10 PD points, I won't even, not me, but from what I hear from the licensed folks, they won't really look at that until they get down to the nitty gritty because they don't have enough points. So it's really not an issue.
I have a quick question about, is it mandatory that we have an administrator on our PDC committee? I mean, has it been?
It is not mandatory. In the guidance, what you need at least 2 people, because we found that when you only have one person, there's nobody to go to for them to approve their stuff. No, okay. I see faces of incredulousness. That is a word, I believe. You have to have 2 people. We figured that out about a year ago because somebody said, well, who do I go to approve my points? Well, technically the board does not have the authority to do that. And there's nobody else on the PDC, so they can't really do it. So we added 2 people. The regs state that you cannot have more leaders than teachers. It doesn't say that you have to have leaders. But most places do, unless they're really, really small. or they'll have one, and they've got 3 buildings for the district, and then they have one district leader that they choose amongst from all of the leaders. So technically, no, you don't have to have it. The minimum is at least 2 positions, which for most places, if that's all they did, they probably would have a leader and a teacher. But it's the ratio that matters. And the big thing is making sure that the teachers basically have the majority of the stock.
Okay. That's my bad, Ed. I think I misinterpreted last year that with the ratio that you had to have an administrator on the committee, but that makes sense. That is, if you do, you must have more teachers than administrators.
And again, that makeup will be based on whatever the PDC decides, based on who the people at the district vote for. So we have lots of different ways of doing it. Yes.
Yeah. And absolutely, it can't be just a superintendent is the only person approving and the only person on the committee.
Correct.
Right. They'd have to have one teacher with them, at least, right?
They would. And then the superintendent would need to be selected by the leadership of the district.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Sure. And one thing that I see in the plans also is sometimes they don't really limit terms. So it's always the same people. And sometimes that's because nobody else wants to do it. But my contention is, as you get new people, hopefully they look at what's going on. And if you're improving it as you go, you might have some people who want to serve. So really kind of consider term limits or whatever if you don't now, just so other people have the option to do that. And I did create language in there for places that cannot get anybody to serve. And it ultimately comes down to appointing somebody if you have to, but that's done by the PDC, not by anybody else. So if you look in the guidance, there's an optional section. If it doesn't apply to what you do, you don't need to use it, but it's there as the approved way of getting people on there who really don't want to be on there. And I did learn that there are contracts out there that don't let the district assign people to extra duties. So that'll be part of whether or not you can even use that section.
Okay. Any other questions from our audience?
Yeah, and if you're anybody that's due, don't freak out. Just wait till Friday when I send you a reminder. But if you know now, that's fine. And I don't need you to get a board approval. I've had a lot of people, it's like, they're not meeting until September. And I'm thinking, well, I just need your stuff. And even if they did meet in September, we could work from whatever they approve then too. So it's not a big deal right now at this point, at this time.
Awesome. Well, Ed, thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'll let you plug your laptop in for this afternoon. And
yeah,
and
I like the picture in here better because the one that I use in the big room, I'm like 300 feet away. It's really far from the camera, so I don't
Yeah.
like looking at myself, but at least you can see me.
Yes, we do like that.
So I will be back at 2. And if you come up with any other questions that you from this meeting that you need from the other one, that's fine, and you can relay back that information to whomever you need to.
All right. Well, thank you, Ed. Hope you have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You too. See you at 2. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. I was able to find the new guidance document. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. Jane and Tracy, will you help me create a synopsis of the answers we received from Ed? From my perspective, it was sit, good, IEP, no. You also don't have to have an administrator on your team, which I did not know. So
But if you do,
clarified that.
Then administrators.
So, do you think that it's okay for service to the profession? Because I got the impression.
He doesn't, I got the impression he doesn't like it, but he's not going to.
Don't forget your mic.
Listen. Oh. Yes, thank you. I got the impression that he does not feel like sit team is good, but he's not going to say, no, you can't. At least that was my impression. Would you agree or not agree?
I don't know what he said. That was very confusing.
It kind of got
Service
lost
to
in there.
profession is very real clear.
Yeah.
I think it's whatever your PD plan agrees upon. It sounded like it was an individual choice of yours. Same with the reading of the books and getting points. It sounds like that's up to your individual PDC. I know it is. I agree.
Which I think is why we feel we want to give you all the information we have, but then we don't always have the most clarity on what those answers are. So we apologize for that, but. So if you're wanting to see that new guidance document that Ed talked about, you will go to teacher licensure and then go down over here to professional development. And then you will go to professional development program and professional development resources. Nope, just kidding. That's not the one. Professional development councils. No, that's not it either. Professional development plans. I practiced a couple of times too, because I'm like, I need to. And it's PD guidance with template. And you'll click on that and that will open up the guidance document. Now it's also kind of interwoven with the 5-year plan, which if you've never looked at a 5-year plan before because you fall under our umbrella, there's a lot, but you can reference those compliance pieces or those definitions that he talked about in this document. And that's where we were able to find it. So.
Can you go through that one more time?
Yes. It's good for me to practice. Okay, so you will go to teacher licensure and over here on links to sections, you'll click professional development. And then this option on the left, your professional development program. And then professional development plans. And then it'll be the 4th document down, the PD guidance with template.
Until it changes and it's not the 4th one down.
Until it's not the 4th one down. But you know, it's more recent than the 2008 one that we last saw, so.
I just didn't realize that he was considering the guidance.
Yes, I was not looking for that by any means. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left. I'm gonna jump in and kind of navigate through the PDC website. Are there any lingering questions that you're like, whoa, let's cover this and clarify real quick before I move on? Mhm.
Question, this thing that you've given us today shows, do we have access to that?
Yes, so we are recording this session, so you should be able to go back and look at that session to reference.
On the PDC page.
Mhm. So that'll be when you go to Southwest Plains, you'll go down to menu and you'll go down to training. Where am I? Annual required training. No, that's not right. PDC, I apologize. Online tools. I thought I was in the wrong spot. PDC under online tools. And that will be where you can reference that slide deck and also a tutorial on how to go through that online application, checklist, all of that. So that's where.
I'm also working on updating all of our videos, our step-by-step videos. So hopefully those will be updated by hopefully the end of the month.
I was gonna say.
Hopefully by next week, but my hard deadline for myself is the end of the month, so I've got one of them done.
Realism.
Okay, Patty. Patty, can I have your help here for a second? I lost my slide deck. Just kidding. I just found it. Sorry, I was navigating too much here. Okay, so that's where you will reference. This is what that looks like, where you can find that slide deck and also the recording of today's training. I did show you the PDC. Okay, thank you. It is a paperless system. I showed you how new users would create their account. Also, if you ever forget your password, it's super easy to go in and hit forget password. It'll send you an email to the connected email and help you get back in. So that's what that first page looks like, your login, the sign up. The best place to go to if you are not sure how to navigate our site or you can't remember how to do like an activity load or anything like that, the FAQ tab is a great resource for both chairs and also for teachers to reference on how do I submit a transcript, how do I put in a points request, those sorts of things. So I would always recommend looking there first. Under transcripts, you can find your transcript record as well as where you apply for the points request, whether it's knowledge, college credit, application. Under development plans is where your teachers will go to update their individual development plan and goals. At the bottom, the district development plan should be pre-populated for them to view. It's at the bottom.
The district is.
Oh, okay. Okay, my apologies. So you can see the school district development plan, but then teachers need to go and update goals, update dates as needed. I don't want to run out of time. Once again, that frequently asked questions tab is going to be a great place to go. If you're ever uncertain how to navigate our website, Patty is a great resource. Would be more than happy to walk you through it. Under the district tab, you are able to activity load. So if you do an entire building or an entire district in service and you want to put in those points for everyone's transcript, you will do that under activity load. You can also view transcripts, update district information from that district tab. Under approvals, if you have district admin access, this is where you will see pending requests for approval for points and also for development plans. And I'm going to go ahead and have Tracy come up and show you a little bit more about the questions we're going to be asking you for our 5-year plan.
Yes, so we have turned in our 5-year plan. As you can tell, the procedures sometimes take a while. And so we actually won't meet with Ed to go over that plan until October. But we're in, the plan is done. For the umbrella part, what they're asking us to do is we'll turn in the umbrella plan and then we will have links in our document to what your district does that's maybe different. And so what we're trying to develop is a Google form that we intend to send to each district that's part of our umbrella plan. I intend to get this out before the first visits start happening. So PDC chairs will have time to look it over and could even go ahead and fill it out if there's not much changes or not much to put in. But if we don't have those responses, then when the consultant comes for your visit, they will make a point to visit with the chair and help get the rest of these answers. So basically it will, let's see if I can view it. Let's see, where's the review preview? It will just ask you to put in what district you're from, the PDC chair's name and email, and your superintendent's name and email. Right now, currently, like for this training, Patty used our list of everyone who has district access level to invite to the meeting because we don't, to be frank, don't know who all of your PDC chairs exactly are, and they may have changed from the last time we did know. So we just included everyone who had district level access to make sure we hit somebody from your district. Oh, it's going to force me. Then we're going to ask you some things about your local procedures. What kind of membership does your committee consist of? Is it one administrator and one teacher, or, 4 teachers from the elementary, 4 teachers from the high school, 4 teachers, they want it at that detail. He wants to know what groups those teachers are representing. How they're selected, do you have a vote at the beginning of school, right? Yeah, or how are they selected? People volunteer, etc. I think probably for Ed, he just doesn't want to see that anyone's being appointed. Information of how often you meet as a committee to approve points. Do you meet monthly? Do you meet quarterly? Do you meet as needed in addition to regular meetings? So if you have a teacher who maybe has got an emergency situation that they procrastinated and need their points approved right away before your next meeting, how do you do that? Time period between the activity and the submission of the points request. Do you require that they turn it in within 30 days of the activity, 60 days, 6 months, 5 years? Whatever your policy is for accepting. Any documentation that you require, how you appoint PD points for purposes related to employment or other matters. Basically, that is the section of if your district uses points to help move on the salary schedule. He just wants whatever the blurb is from your district of how an employee could use PDC points to move on the pay scale. Then we'll ask some questions about the development plan, who decides the focus of your development. And we're still meeting to finish up some of the last questions that will go in as your district's individual differences, I guess. Originally, there was talk that he was going to want a full 40-page plan from every district, and I think we've got it figured out that we don't have to do that, but our 40-page plan with your link to your differences will suffice. So that's why we're asking for this part, is because we don't want you to have to write a 40-page plan. And especially because our umbrella should cover you on that. So no one does. No one does. So when you get this form, if you just fill that out, then I'm going to grab that information and I'm going to make that your link so that he gets the information he's wanting for every individual district, but you fall under our umbrella, if that makes sense.
Tracy, are the PDC consultants that are going on district visits walking through this with them, or you are going to send them the link to the form?
Yes. We're going to send them, I believe, we will send them the link to the form before the visits happen, or before the first visits start happening. And then if Jane gets to X district and they haven't done theirs, she will.
Oh, it's if they haven't done it.
Right.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Or if we have questions about a response, Jane would check with you or whatever consultant is at your district that day. We will be doing this during the fall visit because we have to have it all turned into him. I believe he gave us like a December date for that portion.
So who's this being sent to for the response?
It'll come actually to my email.
For our, like for my district, you send it out to, who are you sending it to fill this out?
Whoever has district admin access.
So what if we have 4? We all get it? You should all get it.
You would all get it.
You'll all get it in one email and then work together. If we get more than one reply. Because we have several admins.
Right. Yeah, just know that when you get that email that you should work with your friends and do one. Right, you only need one for your district.
And if you fill it out multiple times, hopefully our answers are the
Right.
same. I'll be like, hey, so one person says this and one person says this.
Right. Right, so I know that's kind of clear as mud, but we're just kind of operating in a mud pit at the moment. And so, but I think is all going to work out. It'll be okay. And like I said, we do have our large 40-page plan turned in. And then we just need to tweak it with the rest of your information to make it comply with what they're asking us for. So, any questions about? Chance? Maybe?
Could make suggestions.
Yeah.
In his, honestly,
Is your microphone on over there?
Let me stop recording.
Are we still?
I'm still recording. Let me. Where is?
So you've seen it.
Could be under the 3 dots.
You never know. We never know.